Hey y'all, hi. The day has finally come. All I have to say in this intro is that I am sorry it has taken me so long to actually sit down and film this, the Isamaya makeup review. So this brand launched with, I think, 5 products. I think that there was a serum that I didn't get, like a skincare product, but I got the core makeup products from the launch. So the eyeshadow palette, the mascara, the brow gel, and the lip gloss, and I'm going to be reviewing all of them in this video today. I know you've waited a long time. It's been like 25 years since the brand launched. It has just taken me this long because I've had a really uneven experience, really rocky experience with this. I wanted to make sure I had really tested it, especially the eyeshadow palette, because I know that's the thing that everyone wants to know about. I wanted to really put it through the ringer so that I could be sure that the experience I was having wasn't because of just like a clumsy day or a grumpy day or something. And I'm here to tell you, I've used it like a million times. We're like really leaning into the hyperbole today. I have used it so many times. I've tried so hard. I've used all of these products a lot. I waited and waited and waited because I wanted to give you my last word on each one of these 4 products, and that is what I'm going to do. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Hannah, and part of my work here on YouTube is that I review makeup products, so that's what I'm doing today. But I don't like to promote overspending on my channel, so I try to stay grounded. And I also make content that's like more philosophical, talking about makeup and trends. And I also make makeup content where I use my old makeup instead of reviewing new makeup. So if that holistic approach sounds good to you, then I hope you'll subscribe. And now let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. All right, I'm ready finally to do this. And here's what the order of events is going to be. I'm going to put the lip gloss on. We're going to start with the good. I want you to see me applying it, so I didn't put it on before I sat down. I'm going to put it on and I'm going to review the lip gloss. Then I'm going to move on to the brow gel and explain why I'm not wearing it today and why I basically never have been and never will. And then I'm going to do the eyes. And I filmed myself applying this eye look. I'm wearing both the palette and the mascara. I'll talk you through that footage and I'll review both of those products, and that will be that. The LIPLACQ Maximizing Lip Serum in Black Veil is my far and away favorite product from this collection. I might even go so far as to say it's the only one that I like, but I really like it. I mean, I really like it. It's like one of my favorite things that I've tested in this entire year, and one of the things I've tested this year that I have worn the most. Because I've been flourishing it around, it's kind of hard to tell, but when it settles, you can see that I've used like more than a quarter of it, like between a quarter and a third. I'm going through it. That's how much I like it. And I think you'll see why. It's got kind of a stiff paddle applicator, very easy to use for detail work. You have a lot of control with this, and it holds a nice amount of product, just a good old effective doe foot applicator. Smells like vanilla, which is my favorite. And you can see I've just put it on like half my bottom lip. You can see it looks intense. It looks really dark. And this isn't the kind of color that I would pick of my own accord for a lip gloss. Hold on, let me get the whole thing on. I like that I can use the tip of the doe foot to kind of overline my lips. So that's like a full pigment application that it's clearly not totally opaque. It's not like a black lipstick, but with one full doe foot spread all over my lips and without blotting or blurring or anything, that's how dark it is. And I think it's pretty beautiful just like that, but here's how I've been wearing it. That's how I've been wearing it. A little more natural, a little bit less vampy, but still impactful, but really natural. I know I just said natural, but this is the thing that's gagging me about this. Because I started without it on, and this is why I did that. I wanted you to see the difference between how my lips look without this and how they look with this. Because I feel like when you just look at me now, you almost don't notice it. You know what I mean? You don't look at me and think, wow, that woman's wearing a vampy lip gloss. It somehow looks extremely natural, like very much part of the skin. There's just something very part of the body about it. And because it's that way, it's effortless, I feel, for me to wear it, even if I'm wearing no makeup on the rest of my face, no makeup look, nothing to balance it out. And for a vampy color or like a striking color to have that intense wearability on someone so pale, that is amazing. I've gotten so many comments when I've been wearing this, like, what's on your lips, what's on your lips, what's on your lips? And it's distinctive because I've gotten so many comments as well wearing it from people who I think have tried it or bought it themselves saying, oh, you're wearing the Isamaya gloss. I can tell that that's the Isamaya gloss. It's just carrying It's eating. It's a serve. And it really impressed me. And it alone is what is causing me to follow the future career of this brand with great interest, because the other ones had a bit more of an uphill battle. To me, this is the lip product of the season, like the lip product of fall winter 2022. I'm really glad that I got it in my hands, and I'm not going to stop wearing it anytime soon. Also, let me quickly address the plumping thing. It's not massively plumping like, you know, the old lip injection or something like that. And when I say the old lip injection, I don't mean actual lip injections, and I'm just referring to them in a jaunty way, like the old lip injection. That's not what I mean. I mean the product called Lip Injection, which I think was from Too Faced, and it's old. I'm literally talking about the aged product, Lip Injection. It doesn't do that like tingling, bee-stung lips type of thing, but I do feel like it gives my lips a little boost, and it's definitely smoothing. You know what I mean? It causes the skin on the lips to kind of like causes that skin to kind of like come out, you know, and like live its best. And I think because I'm able to overline a little bit without it looking unnatural, I always feel like my lip silhouette has been a bit enhanced when I put it on, but it's shiny. So the fact that it's dark doesn't make my lips look smaller. It's just very well balanced, very, very well balanced. And again, the smell is it's a strong vanilla. So if you don't like that, be warned, but I really do like that. So, you know, it checks all of the boxes. It checks boxes I didn't even know existed. It only comes in one color, which is intriguing, but I'm so glad that that's the case, because if it had come in any other color, that's the color I would have chosen. I wouldn't have chosen this color based on looks, and this color is part of what makes it so amazing. I also think that it is truly universal. If you told me this is universal, I would be like, yeah, but what about really pale people? But since I'm a really pale person and it's working on me, I think that I can confidently say that this is a universal gloss, and that is really good to see, especially from a brand only releasing one color. The BROWLAQQ Brow Laminator might have been actually the biggest letdown, although we'll see. There are a couple of things vying for that title, but I feel like it's probably this because it doesn't work for me just at all. It's a clear set brow gel. It comes with this little comb. And I was so excited to try this because the extremely spiky, wet, lacquered brows that you see in all of the imagery, the promises of it, what it seems like it will do based on the delivery mechanism and the texture of the product, which, as you can see, is very stiff and jelly-like and crystalline. I just really thought it was going to work. I don't know Isamaya's makeup work. I don't know who Isamaya is. I just ordered this makeup because everyone told me to review it. I am not familiar. And, you know, I've seen the advertising. I've seen the sexy advertising, and I've seen the aesthetic of the makeup in the Instagram posts and the ads and on the website. And based on that, I was like, I think this person is going to deliver what I need, which is just a really, really, really strong hold brow gel, something that's like the got-to-be glued hair gel. You know, it sets down to like a hard, immovable finish. And this doesn't. And it seems like it's going to. It was so disappointing when I first started testing it. Sorry, cat hair. Because it's so shiny and it's really thick and gunky, and it coats the hair that just fills the brows with itself. So when I first got it and I started putting it into my brows, and then I was like moving the brows around with this little comb, manipulating them, and they were looking like really shiny, like greased up and spiky. I was like, this is amazing. And then as it dries, they all just fall back down. It just becomes limp again, loose again. It doesn't it loses its stick. It's like it dries to an unsticky thing, and it has coated each individual brow hair, but it's lost its hold, and they just become sort of coated. It's like each brow hair is laminated and shiny, but they're not laminated to the skin. So I would get them glued up, really shiny, super laminated to the skin, perfectly shaped, and then within 5 minutes they would be still shiny, but like totally collapsed back down to the regular kind of weird, soft, uneven shape that my brows are when I wake up in the morning, like before I've put anything in them. And I tried a number of times, and the only way that I could get it to work for me was to mix it with the Refi Brow Gel, which is the strongest hold brow pomade I've ever come across. And then at that point, it's like, why? Because it's really just the one that works for me, the Refi, fighting against what this wants to do, which is to kind of like weigh my brow hairs back down so that they just lie down. I really like the way that it is to interact with this product. I just wish that the hold was stronger, because as it is, there's no reason for me to ever use it again. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. the thing that you're all here for. Let us talk about the palette and let me try to explain why it's been such a challenge for me. And maybe I'll quickly address the packaging of this and the packaging of everything. You know, it's cool. It's alluring, it's distinctive, it's attention-getting, it's definitely fetishy, and I actually, I mean, that's clearly what it's trying to be, but I actually kind of mean that in the larger sense, because I do use that word sometimes to talk about things that don't actually have this aesthetic, this like specifically fetish aesthetic, but that create that feeling like you want to touch it, or it makes you kind of want to hold it and just have it in a way that doesn't have anything to do with it being makeup. You know, it has that quality about it. It has created a certain je ne sais quoi about itself. And it's pretty well executed. The ball fell out of the mascara. The mascara was piercing had a ball that fell out like on the first day. And then the whole thing fell out of the mascara. And I actually, or maybe the ball was in the lip gloss. I can't remember. It started falling apart almost as soon as it arrived, some of it. But I'm on board. I'm not over here like criticizing every tiny thing about the packaging. If I were going to criticize anything about the packaging, I would criticize the fact that the ball fell out of the mascara pretty much right away. And the palette is all plastic and it's much more impressive to look at than it is to handle. On an extremely pedestrian practical note, this three-dimensional lid, of course, makes it difficult to store if you store your palettes in a certain way. You know, and if you store them together like books, this would make it hard to store. I also found that this got quite dusty, but I think that might just be because my house is dusty or like I don't dust enough. It's probably my fault. I'm not over here like going gaga over the packaging and being like, it's the coolest and best thing that I've ever seen. I do think it's a bit on the nose. That's what I said when I first beheld this packaging in the new Makeup Releases Hot Takes video when it was first announced months and months ago. What I said then, I still think, which is that if you're going to titillate, then I feel like you need to do a little bit less than this. Like it's extremely literal. It's giving us everything and it's giving us everything in a direction that speaks of sort of teasing and titillation. And it's like a bit at cross purposes with itself in that way, I feel. It's unsubtle, you know? But if you're going to do this, you're going to do it this way, then yeah, it's great. And the mascara in particular, I really like the rubberized coating of. It's soft and grippy. It has that like matte silicone feel and it's a little bit squishy on the ends. And it's really gratifying. It's one of my favorite things about the packaging all over. Am I talking about the packaging as a way of procrastinating, putting off trying to explain why this eyeshadow palette has been such a letdown to me? Here's the thing. Here's what I want to say to you right now. The only thing that anyone has said to me about this in DMs, and there have been a lot of them, and in comments on my channel, the only thing anyone has said is either, I want you to review it, I'm curious about it, or you're gonna love it. I love it. I can't put it down. Everybody who has contacted me about this, who has it, has said that they love it. And I don't want to take that away from you. That hasn't been my experience. I don't live, laugh, love it. Okay. I don't. I do not get along with this palette and I'm going to try to explain why. But because I'm aware that so many of you have loved it, I've really been, and this is why this review has taken so long for me to prepare, I've really been interacting with this palette and experiencing my frustration with it in that context, by which I mean I've been trying to understand what it is about my preferences and my expectations for eyeshadow that are specific to me that aren't being met with this palette that might mean that I'm struggling with it where other people aren't. And hopefully that will allow me to give you the most nuanced and accurate possible review. Take it with a grain of salt. And for those of you who haven't tried this palette, just know other people are enjoying it. And now that I've said that, I'm not going to hold back because I really need to get this off my chest. It's the formula for me. And I have two, I think, major frustrations. One is that the shadows don't have the kind of pigment that spreads that you can kind of work with. There are so many beautiful bronzes in here, beautiful, grungy, mucky, ashy bronzes, the exact kind of thing that I love. And every time I open the palette and I'm about to put an eye look on, I choose one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4 mucky bronzes or this sort of like flaky bluish gray thing. I choose one, I go in with my finger and try to get a bunch of it on my finger and I start trying to put it on my eyes. And inevitably what happens is it gives me nothing. And in fact, this would be a good time for me to show you the first part of this eye look today, because that's what I did today. I didn't even have a plan for which shadow I was going to choose. I just went on instinct like I always do. Opened it up, picked a bronze, the one that was looking appealing to me today, got it on my finger, went to apply it to my lids, and you will see in the footage, nothing. It gives me nothing. They all do this to me. All of these bronzes. It feels like there's a kind of grainy bronze pigment suspended in an unpigmented or a very lightly pigmented ashy base that isn't creamy, that doesn't really stick, that isn't representative of the color that I see in the pan, and that is kind of difficult to blend and doesn't spread very far. It feels like every single eyeshadow is mixed with cigarette ash. And usually I would say that as a compliment because aesthetically, I love that. Aesthetically, that's what I'm going for. I want my eyes to look like I mixed every single eyeshadow with cigarette ash. But I don't want them to feel like that when I'm applying them to my eyes. I don't want to struggle to blend and to get payoff and to get the color to be represented the way that I would if it were actually just pigment mixed with actual cigarette ash. But that's what I feel like is happening when I try to blend out these bronzes. It feels like a sandy, ashy, unpigmented thing. And my second grievance is that they are all getting hard pan. And I took some footage when I was applying this look today to try to show you what I'm talking about. When I go in, and I'm not even pressing all that hard with my fingers, but just rubbing with my finger on the surface of any of these pans, it causes the surface of the pan to sort of compress and the pigments to like stick to each other and hold on to each other. And then they don't want to transfer to my finger because they're like compressed into the pan and they're stingy. It's like the pans become stingy. Or if I keep going, they start to become crumbly and like crumbs pick up. You know what it looks like when an eyeshadow has hard pan, and half of these have it. The ones that I've been trying to use because they're the colors that I really like. They're all starting to develop it, and the ones that I've used the most are the ones that have the worst hard pan. So inevitably, and let me continue to show you what I did today, because what I did today is what I inevitably always do. Inevitably, I go into one of these bronzes, try to apply it to my eyes, I get nothing, and it doesn't blend out very well, and it's washy and patchy. So I switched to another bronze, hoping that I'll get more from it. And today I switched to, I think it was this one, the sort of greenish one here, and it was a little bit darker. It did give me a little bit more. So I pressed that in the outer corner and I blended them together with a brush. And at that point, the look was looking okay. You know what I mean? Like I got to a point where it looked okay. And especially for kind of a daytime look or a look that's not too intense, that would be fine. I'm not complaining about the aesthetic of the look because, again, that sort of grungy, smudgy, cigarette ashy look, I'm always going for that. So I ended up, after just those first two eyeshadows, with something akin to what I like to do. But I just felt like the process of getting there was so frustrating. I didn't feel like I had control over the level of intensity of the shadows or the blend or even the shapes I was putting on my eyes because I was just trying my darndest to get color and get pigment onto my lids and structure and shape. And I end up with that level of intensity, that sort of mid-toned, washy, ashy bronze every time. I can't get more than that unless I go into the one shadow that I really like, which we'll talk about in a second. With all the rest of them, I can't get more than that. I can't. And I tried today, actually. I went into the matte black right here. It is such a weird eyeshadow and it feels really unpigmented. It just really didn't build in the outer corner, didn't deepen the outer corner. And so I ended up with this kind of pale, gritty, watercolory version of the grungy, smoky, sooty eye that I like. One of the biggest disappointments of this palette for me is this shade right here, this like sparkly sheer champagne. It's so thin. And that's the thing, like the shadows, they feel a little gritty and they just feel so thin when you touch them. Some of them swatch pretty well, but then you go to apply them and they're not creamy at all. They're super dry, crumbly. They're not flaky and creamy. With the exception of this one, the sort of gray mirror-like one. It definitely is flaky. That's the kind of texture that I like. And here, I'll give you a really good close-up of that. This is a gorgeous shadow. Gorgeous. If there was a single bronze in here that was like this, I would be having a much better experience. But even then, I would be like, why is the matte black giving me nothing? Why is this blue, which I tried to use on my eyes, I'll tell you about it in a second, or I'll show it to you in a second, but this blue-brown pigment, look at the swatch of that. So lackluster. I mean, that's like an old school ColourPop Tea Garden or something. It reminds me of my pan of ColourPop Tea Garden that I had for like 5 years and eventually decluttered because it did this. It got that sort of flat, oily, hard pan and it was so lackluster. This reminds me of that right out of the gate. So yeah, this is great, but it's only this one and the shadow that I really like, which is this really shiny, flaky, black with shimmer. Like, that's the eyeshadow of my dreams. Amazing. And it also performs really well. So those two are great, right? They're giving me something. But I actually don't end up using this silver very much because it's so cool toned. It's actually sort of it's a seal blue silver. It's not really in my palette, my color palette. So that's why I say that there's only the one that I like, the black one, because it's really the only one that's in my firmament. You know what I mean? I mean, color-wise, there are a bunch of shadows here that I would love if they had those creamy, flaky textures. But apart from those two, they just don't. And this shiny, sheer, sparkly one is one of the worst offenders. You'll see in the close-up that just barely any of it transfers onto my finger. It's getting terrible hard pan because I've tried so hard to get it to work. And I've put it all over my lids and all over like the inner part of each eyelid because that's what I love to do with that kind of eyeshadow, like Natasha Denona Cava style, Tom Ford Naked Bronze style. It's there and it's kind of shiny, but it's just not high voltage. It's just not impressive. It's not makeup gone wild, breaking the rules, out of control, giving us something we've never seen before at all. It is not really fulfilling the promises, I feel, of this palette and its marketing. It looks like it would. And the colors that she's chosen, the way that they're combined, color-wise, the ashiness, the sort of grittiness, the fact that they're all kind of mucky a little bit, mixed with a little bit of black, all of that is sort of making that promise. And then the formulas just can't follow through. That has been my experience. The last thing I did today with my lids was that I went into this blue because I wanted to show you that really thin blue-brown pigment. I wanted to show you that it's not as though it doesn't show up on the eyes. I wanted to show you that. I'm sorry about these sentences and my inflection. I wanted to show you that it's not as though it doesn't show up on the eyes. It swatches in a very lackluster way. It feels very uninspiring to touch, but I was able to get it to transfer. And you can see that there's this blue on my eyes, right? I used that eyeshadow and it's visible on my lids, but I feel like it just ended up covering up what was underneath it. And there's no real nuance. There's none of that super intriguing, sort of smudgy, like what's going on, galaxy, like something shining through something else. The blue covered up the bronze that was underneath it, and that was kind of it. And here's the thing. I think the eye look is great. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think my eyes look bad today and I couldn't get an eye look out of it. I always manage to get an eye look out of it. The thing that I did to really bring it home today to make it work was that I used this flaky, shiny black, which is very pigmented and has great payoff. I used it in the outer corners to get a little bit more of a smoky look, get more structure. I also used like a reddish burgundy eyeliner in my waterline, and I think that really brought the look alive. So yeah, I turned it out eventually. It's just, this is what my eyes always end up looking like when I use this palette. It's always the same. I try one bronze, it doesn't work well. I try another bronze, doesn't work well. I try another bronze, doesn't work well. Try to deepen the outer corner, have to default to the flaky, shiny black. I use that shiny shade all over my brow bone, or I'll use this white one, which has a really strong blue reflect, but I'm just not as much of a fan of blue. It's fine as well. It's like fine, but it's not eating. It's not really taking me there. And so I always end up with this like mixed with cigarette ash, just perfectly fine version of a grungy eye. And it always feels like it was pulling teeth to get there. I'm sorry. That has been my experience. Here's another thing. As I sit here, it's occurring to me, it's like vaguely occurring to me that I might have heard somewhere that this palette could be used wet or dry. And now I'm having these worries that the comments are going to be filled with people being like, you're supposed to use it wet. The reason they're not working is because you're supposed to use them wet. They're supposed to be like watercolors and you're just using them dry. I'm putting that out as a caveat because maybe I missed that. Although I ordered this like as a box and the box came and there was all of this writing on it and it was very like Isamaya, rubber, bondage. Like it was very that. And there was text that was like, here's what we're giving. Like this is what the makeup does. It does this. It does that. It makes you feel all these feelings. And I read all of that. So if I, as just a consumer, went to the website, put all the things in my cart, purchased them, received the package in the mail, read all of the stuff that the package came with, and didn't receive crucial information. I'm saying if the only way to make this palette gratifying is to use water, to mix it with water, but I did all of that and I didn't receive that crucial information, actually not even just as a consumer, but as a reviewer, as someone planning to review it, then I don't feel like that's on me, I guess is what I'm saying. Because I could see anyone, nay, most people who have experience with eyeshadow, ordering this palette, never receiving information that it was supposed to be mixed with water, and doing what I did, using it for like well over a month, trying to make it work and feeling like it's the emperor's new clothes. I mean, it's one thing if the palette is designed to be used wet or dry, you know what I mean? And it's like you can use it wet and you can use it dry. But if that's the case, then the dry option is, in my opinion, very poor, like frustrating. Only a few of the shadows really are present and accounted for, you know? And so if what I'm remembering, if this like ghost of a memory that's coming forward now of like maybe it's supposed to be wet or dry, if that's true and I'm not just making it up, I feel like they should have made a bigger deal out of the fact that this is designed to be used with water, because most people don't mix their eyeshadows with water. I'm a little bit grasping at straws here. Again, this is me trying to figure out why so many of you have had such a good experience with this and I have struggled with it so much. And the other thing, the main thing that occurred to me and that I think might be the answer to that just has to do with the art supplies experience that I'm looking for. So yes, this is the kind of eye look that I enjoy. Grungy, mixed with cigarette ash, kind of uneven, blackened. This is what I enjoy. But I like to be able to put it together with full control over all of its aspects. You know what I mean? I like to be able to choose how dark the outer corner is going to be, how big the blend is going to be, how the shadows are going to layer with each other, whether something is going to be lightly applied or heavily applied. And in order for me to be able to have that control, the shadows have to be pigmented. They have to like do what I'm asking them to do. If I pick black eyeshadow up on the tip of my brush and I put it on my eye, it has to leave a black mark there. And then I can manipulate that. I can blend it out to be a soft black. I can pack it in to be a dark black. But this palette doesn't give me that option. It's like you kind of get what you get. And what you get is always like a washy mid-toned version of the color. And the textural blend is never satisfying. It's never like that tactile experience of touching and smearing and blending and shading and layering that I relish so much in eyeshadow. I think maybe if for you it's more about this exciting, grungy aesthetic end result, and you don't have a lot of eyeshadow that's really pigmented that you've been using for a long time to do looks like this, which is what I do and what I have been doing, then I could see how this would be exciting, because it's like every time you touch it, you end up looking like you smudged in your eyeshadow with a sooty thumb. You know what I mean? And that's exciting. And I'm excited that there's something on the market that's really putting that forward. It's very like grunge forward, and I'm here for that. And I think a lot of you are too, and that's why it's been so exciting. But I don't like using it. I don't like using the eyeshadows. I struggle with it. I can't make choices. It's like I can't make my own choices. I just keep trying and trying and trying until finally I have a version of this every single time. And I have had to force myself to continue using it to prepare for this review. I never want to use it again. I hope today was the last day. I'm going to give it away. I really, really don't like it. I think that's all I have to say. I'll show you the swatches, and it's interesting interesting. When I swatched it today, before I sat down to film this talking part of this video, I was surprised at how well some of the shadows swatched. Even some of the ones that I've struggled with the most, some of those bronzes, they have pretty good payoff in the swatches, some of them, but it just doesn't tell the tale. And you can really see it in the mattes too. In my experience, they don't build, especially not on top of the other eyeshadows. I mean, I don't think that these swatches came out particularly impressive, but even then, I felt like the palette showed up better. It swatched better than I was expecting it to based on my experience using it over the past month, if that tells you anything. So I hope the swatches will be useful to you if you're here for that, if you really want to see them. As you can tell, it's a very, a relatively, I think, subjective thing here. I'm feeling unconfident in my review because it's so opposite of what I've heard other people say, and it's so not what all of you thought that I was going to say, those of you who have used this palette. I hope that I've shown you enough visually and given you enough linguistically for you to be able to draw your own conclusions. I don't think that my word is the last word. I'm just putting my word in my hat and throwing it in the ring. Okay, let's move on to talk about the mascara. I thought I was going to love it. I love the idea. Rubber lash. I love the concept of it, the branding, again, the packaging. I love it. And when I first started using it, I was like, yeah, this is great. And it is true that if you build and 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 let it dry between coats and keep going and dry between coats and keep going, it will eventually get you to that insane false lash place, really furry, thick, almost sheets of lashes that I love. I haven't been doing it as much lately because I just haven't had the wherewithal, but especially like 3 or 4 years ago, I was so into that kind of lash, and I was always looking for any mascara that would give that to me, that would be buildable enough that I would be able to get it to that place. And of course, I've since come across several that do that. I feel like Dior Show does that. Better Than Sex kind of does that. The Gucci mascara definitely does that. Even the Chantecaille mascara, if you keep building the Ilia mascara, I mean, there are a lot lengthening and thickening mascaras that are really worth their salt. If you build and build for 6, 7 coats, they'll eventually get you to that place. And you know, I'm here for that. So yes, it does do that. And I think that that's great. But again, it's like the experiential aspect of it. And for me with this, it has this really spiky brush. After a week or two, it started to dry out a little bit and it got kind of gummy, the mascara. It still performs perfectly well, and I can probably continue to use it for another month or two. But because of that gumminess and because of the spikiness of the brush, it started to feel like it's kind of rough on my lashes. And when I really try to do the most with it, like I did today, I really built and I tried to show you like what it can do. When I do that with this, it's just a whole thing. And it takes a really long time to just sit there building and building. I kind of end up feeling like it would have taken less time to actually apply false lashes. Even applying them, wearing them, and then peeling them off would have been less rough on my lashes. I just feel like this really spiky comb pulling through my lashes that are gunked up with this like gummy stuff. Just feel like it's pulling my lashes out of their sockets. And so it's become less worth it to me. And also once it got a little bit gummy, it stopped being as effective in 1 or 2 coats. So it's become this mascara that I'll use it if I'm going to go the distance with it. But if I'm just putting on 1 or 2 coats for a regular daily look, I'm probably not going to use it because I feel like it isn't treating my lashes as well as other brushes do. And I feel like it's actually not even giving me as much in just 1 or 2 coats as some other mascaras do. To top it all off, it stings my eyes if I get it in them. And I have had mascaras that work well for me that are stingy if I tear up or something and I just, put on a coat or 2, and if I don't cry that day, I'm fine. But with this, because I'm building and building and going back and back and back, I'm putting so much of it on my lashes and I'm trying to work it into the roots of my lashes so that I'll have that volume. It's just hard to keep a teeny tiny bit of it from getting into my eyes from time to time. And this reminds me that one of the issues that I've had with the palette too is that I feel like the graininess of some of the shadows causes little grains of eyeshadow to get into my eyes more frequently than with other eyeshadows. I just have experienced a much higher than usual percentage of eye irritation with these 2 products. And I've used the palette a lot without the mascara. So I know that it's not just the mascara. A much higher percentage of eye irritation than I do usually. Totally. And so I'm just left with this feeling like the aesthetic is on point. The desired makeup goal is so aligned with what I want. And that's true of all of this, right? The brow gel, the palette, the mascara, everything that it's saying it's going to do is so aligned with what I'm interested in makeup. And then I just feel like it all falls short in the execution. And maybe I had really high hopes because I was so into the aesthetic. And maybe I have very high standards because I test a lot of makeup. And I've been trying to get my makeup to look like this for a long time with other tools. So I've like searched the world for eyeshadows that help me get this grungy look, a brow gel that really holds my brows in place, and mascaras that I can build and build. And I've like cobbled together a kit for doing that kind of thing from what is the most effective that I've found from everything. So comparing this, which aesthetically it's all one set, it's all cohesive, the exterior of the packaging is really telling me what it's giving, comparing that to my sort of best of the best at this task, it just doesn't come anywhere close to what I enjoy using the most. And not just the end result of using that stuff, but the experience, like the tactile experience of using it. I'd rather just use Pat McGrath eyeshadows and my Chantecaille mascara and do a look like this. I think it would look just as good and maybe even more interesting and more nuanced, and I would have had so much more user-friendly of an experience putting it together. I am going to be keeping an eye on this brand. I mean, it's all been very interesting. How interesting to have a brand with all of these buzzwords that are really specific to what I like, you know, like the grunginess, the messiness, the imperfection, the rubbery, long, spidery lashes. I'm so interested in all of that. And it's cool to see it advertised in the way that it was advertised. It's interesting to see the art surrounding the launch, the imagery of makeup artistry that went along with this launch. It's just been enjoyable to watch that unfold, and it'll be enjoyable to continue watching it unfold if they continue to create and release products. And you know, clearly, they're capable of creating and releasing a product that I really love. If I had spent my own money on this instead of the review budget for the channel, I wouldn't regret that at all. However, if I had spent my own money on any of the other things, I would totally regret it. And if there's like a me out there, you know what I mean? If I were watching this review instead of the one putting it together, where was I going with that hypothetical situation in which I'm watching myself review this palette? If there was an alternate universe in which I had never become a makeup reviewer and I was just tootling along in my regular life, and then this palette had come across my radar and piqued my interest, if I could go to that alternate universe and speak with that alternate self, I would say, Hannah, don't buy the palette. Don't buy the mascara either. And definitely don't buy the brow gel because it doesn't work. I'm just going to leave that hypothetical situation here. I think I have told you what my experience has been. I think that I've told you all that I can, and I'm going to go. I really appreciate you for watching this review. Thank you for being here. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.